Member of Congress who, for the third time now, has introduced a bill calling for more transparency in those donations to the foundations that create presidential libraries or presidential centers is John Duncan, a Republican of Tennessee. And once again, last month he introduced his legislation calling for transparency for all those donors to be listed. We caught up with him yesterday while Congress is on break and asked him about the legislation. Representative John Duncan of Tennessee has been pursuing transparency in the funding of presidential libraries for many years. Congressman Duncan, what specifically would you like to see happen?
Well, I would like to see the contributions to presidential libraries to be reported. It doesn't. My bill doesn't limit contributions in any way, but it just calls for more disclosure, more transparency about the process. I became interested in this several years ago when I read that President Clinton had pardoned a man named Mark Rich who had fled the country to avoid $40 million in income taxes, and then he got a full pardon on President Clinton's last day in office. And a short time later, it was disclosed that Mr. Rich's ex-wife, with whom he was still very close, had given, I think it was a $400,000 contribution to the President's Library. And then also there was a sizable contribution from Saudi Arabia and others. And so I just thought it was something that was very much open to abuse, and I thought something should be done about it. And actually we've passed it. We've passed that bill in the House 3 times now.
Well, the bill that you've introduced recently in the House, once again, what's the level at which you'd have to report a contribution? You mentioned foreign countries. Would your bill prohibit foreign countries from contributing to a presidential library?
No, it would not prohibit any contribution of any kind. All it would do would be to require disclosure so people could see where contributions were coming from, because these committees are formed while presidents are still in office to raise funds while or before presidents leave office, and so there's a real potential for abuse there, and I just think it's something that there needs to be more openness about it, and there needs to be this reporting, and it would require all contributions of $200 and above to be reported on a quarterly basis.
Well, what's the federal law now? What do you have to do when you make a contribution to a presidential
There's no federal law on it. There's no law on it at all now, and so those committees are just they're unlimited, unrestricted in any way, so they can get huge contributions, and it seems to me and to everybody who's looked into this that people could make big contributions to these libraries while the president is still in office, and obviously, pretty obviously being done in hopes of getting favorable treatment from that, either from that president or at least from his administration, while that president still has the power to be of significant help. And this is something I'm very pleased to say has received total bipartisan support. I started the bill, but it's been passed with very few dissenting votes in the House, and in fact, I sponsored the original version. Later, when the Democrats took control of the Congress, it was the original sponsor became Chairman Waxman, the Democratic chairman of the Oversight and Government Reform Committee at the time, and now with the most recent action, we passed it out of the Oversight and Government Reform Committee unanimously, and it was co-sponsored by the ranking Democrat on the committee, Representative Elijah Cummings from Maryland.
Well, do you think you have any traction this time around? Do you think you're going to see a floor date for this bill?
Yes. That date's not been set yet, but it will be set very soon, and I can tell you we're getting more interest in this bill now than ever before. In fact, there was a lengthy article, a favorable article about it in USA Today. Just 2 or 3 weeks ago, it was brought up by someone at a presidential press conference with the president's press secretary, who also who really didn't know the details but mentioned it in a favorable way. And then Juan Williams apparently wrote a favorable article about it on his blog, which I haven't seen. I've not seen that article yet, but I was told about it by Patrick Newton, my staff member who's handling this.
Well, you mentioned the Clinton Library, but you also tried again around the time of the creation of the Bush Library, ran into some headwinds in the Senate. What happened with that effort?
As I understand it, Senator Stevens from Alaska had some opposition to it, but the way we've got this bill now, it would, I can assure you this is not aimed at any particular president. This is a bill that would apply to both Republican and Democratic presidents.
Congressman John Duncan represents the 2nd District of Tennessee, joining us by phone. Thanks for the update on your bill.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm a big fan of C-SPAN, so it's a privilege to be on.